Well, hello, everyone. I'm Corinne Martin, and I'm here today to talk to you about my new book, Louisiana Healing Garden, and excuse me, to tell you a little bit about how I came to write the book and what you might find in it, and why I feel so drawn to thinking about not only healing for our own lives, our own bodies, and health, but also for how I think that medicinal plants and their recognition and use can fit in with thinking about how we can help to heal, even in small ways, the wonderful place in which we live. So I have some cheat notes over here, so maybe see me glancing over there. And I have my wonderful book from LSU Press. Thank you so much for all those who are involved in helping me do it. Jenny Keegan and Min Martin and Corey Calabria, who is the man behind the scenes for right now. So what I'm planning on doing in this time is to spend some time talking to you about the book, how it came to being, what's in it, talk about healing and medicinal plants and how they work and how you might get started learning about them and um, and then also, my own personal journey and some of the challenges that the state faces and then we'll have time at the end of that for some questions. So maybe you will have questions that come up as I'm talking. Just please make note of them so we can talk about them later. Um, so let's see, what shall I start with? Well, I'm Corinne Martin, as I mentioned, and I am a certified clinical herbalist and author, and I'm also retired from teaching in the University of Southern Maine School of Nursing. So that was a great opportunity to talk about holistic and integrative health at the university, and to help our healthcare providers understand a little bit about holistic health approaches and also medicinal plants. So I grew up in Louisiana in Terrebonne Parish in Homa, and also spent a lot of time in St. Charles Parish, where my grandparents and my thousand cousins live. And now in the last few years, I divide my time between my home in Maine and in Louisiana. So in Louisiana, I am escaping winter. Well, I'm escaping Maine winter. Um, and my daughters and my grandson live in Maine, so that's why my primary residence is there. But I always look forward to being back in Louisiana, and my body still recognizes it as home. So I want to talk a little bit about well, I'm going to talk a lot about Louisiana um, uh, Healing Garden. And just we'll sort of get started about how that came about. And also just to mention that prior to that book, Louisiana LSU Press also published my original book here, or my first book, Louisiana Herb Journal. So those two actually act as companion books, although each of them is a standalone as well. Um, so uh, medicinal plants, I want to talk to you about how they work, how they've been used through time, the importance of how we can support our everyday health, and also how recognition of those plants that grow around us in the wild and in our gardens can kind of help us to move toward a more holistic, if you want to use the word, or kind of whole approach to our health. And before I start all of that, I just want to throw in my little disclaimer here. It's not a medical book. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I did teach nurses, but I'm not a nurse. And if you have not used medicinal plants before and you're considering that, um, the person probably who knows your health best beside you is your medical doctor and your healthcare practitioners. So, if you're thinking of beginning to explore this world of medicinal plants, it's really important to have your physician aware of what you're wanting to do and to see what that person's thoughts might be along that line. So before I start all of this, my little cheat sheet here, I wanted to read something from you. This is from the preface of the book of the Louisiana Healing Garden. So this is just the very beginning of the book, and it's a little kind of thought about gardens and healing. So here we go. A garden is hope. A garden is work, sweaty engagement, a host of lessons, a constant humbling surprise, a promise. A healing garden is a lively, changeable intersection between the web of wild lives all around us and our own home ground. A garden extends beyond the little plot we've laid out for it and reaches back to its own feral roots. A garden is the sun and rain and soil, the rascally critters who try to get to the produce before we do, and the beetles that nibble holes in our first perfect blooms. A garden is our ancestors, all they've learned, the wisdom they've shared, the world they knew, and all the changes wrought by weather and time and human intervention. Catholic priest, ecologist, and philosopher Thomas Berry spoke at the turn of the century about the state of the Earth's ecosystem and the many threats to its health from human use and misuse. He noted, "The great work now, as we move into a new millennium, is to carry out the transition from a period of human devastation of the Earth to a period when humans would be present to the planet in a mutually beneficial manner." I believe that getting to know the land and plants and animals all around us and helping a healing garden to thrive can be one step in that direction. So thank you, Thomas Berry. So I began to study herbs over 40 years ago. A friend had mentioned to me that she thought medicinal plants could be really helpful sometimes in healing. And my older daughter had severe asthma and then later developed some other health issues and was on lots of different medications. And not that I wasn't grateful for those, but we were feeling sort of overwhelmed with all of the different medications and whatever. So a friend suggested that we, try some simple medicinal plants as a way to maybe help support her health and shore up her health instead of always having to wait till the most dramatic next trip to the emergency room. And for my daughter, I have to say that it was it was empowering for her because for the first time, instead of just, waiting for the next bad event to happen and being shipped off to the emergency room, she could say, I'm feeling really congested. And then we could use some gentle medicinal plants to kind of help as decongestants and to prevent that going any farther. And so she, at a sudden, at that point, became at least a proponent of her own health, not just kind of the victim of whatever happened to her. I also grew up lots of family healers, lots of doctors and nurses in my family. And in fact, my sister and I, my mother was a medical records transcriptionist. And so my sister and I learned to spell by using medical words. So supraspinatus, tendinitis, and hydatidiform, and all of those. We spell them phonetically. So we kind of learned to spell phonetically. I went away from Louisiana after having grown up here and then moved around the country to a few different places. And but I was long distance caretaker for my aunt who died at 102. And so I sort of was drawn back to Louisiana because when she passed away, I brought her ashes home and all of a sudden realized that I had 1,000 cousins and it felt so wonderful to be here. So sometimes I tell people that I have bayou water in my veins and it still feels that way. So I was so drawn to Louisiana to come back and to reconnect with my roots here. And it's been a really amazing experience. And one of the challenges of coming back is to realize the difficult situation that Louisiana finds itself in terms of floods and toxicity in the soil and polluted air and whatever. And so, it just occurred to me that if I could somehow do something to help people see the land around them as something um, to that could be a healer, as opposed to something to just use or manage or pave over. But instead, all of these opportunities out there, and they're all growing in the wild. So that was the source really of the inspiration for my book, Louisiana Herb Journal. Another plug for that one, ta-da, which came out in 2022. And so, I started researching medicinal plants. Like the way that I'm oriented is I'm just oriented to nature, that has always been more my home than any house. So I started walking or taking walks, which I do every day, and looking at the different plants and started identifying them. And then I started putting together a list of the medicinal plants in the state and that I was finding myself, and that I could then sort of find more information about and try them and et cetera. And so I now have a 300,000 page document um, with lots and lots of medicinal plants in it. So I thought, well, let's just, you know, see what I can come up with. And so that eventually was, fortunately, not 300,000 pages, but that was the beginning of my journey with Louisiana herbs, and that was Louisiana Herb Journal. Um, and that book contains 50 plants that you can find in the wild around here. And then, because of course there are more herbs, and because there are so many people here who do gardens. I mean, who in Louisiana isn't a gardener? Um, so it occurred to me a couple of things about gardens. First of all, that many people have them, and also that many of them contain plants that are medicinal, but people aren't really thinking about that. So that aspect of it, I mean, we plant gardens so they'll look beautiful or they produce some food or something like that. But then I thought, well, suppose we look to see what plants that were already growing have medicinal properties. And out of that came the idea for Louisiana Healing Garden. So Louisiana Healing Garden has 50 more medicinal plants. And believe me, the list is not done with those two books, but I'm getting older by the second, so we'll see what happens next. But so the two main ideas behind Louisiana Healing Garden were, first of all, that we really all live in the midst of some kind of garden. I mean, you can be in downtown New Orleans and you'll see plants, or on some old side road that looks like only you know concrete carrying trucks or something go by every day. And believe me, there are herbs there. So that first idea that we all live in the midst of a garden anyway, so why not kind of get to look at it and examine what's growing here? And then the other idea that really prompted it was the thought that, and I really think this is true, that a garden can be something you create, but it can also be something you discover. So why not look around at the plants? I mean, those plants that you're complaining about all the time, like cleavers. I mean, I haven't met one person here who likes cleavers, but it's a wonderful medicinal plant. And it's very gentle and it can be edible, although, maybe not raw. And so if you're not familiar with cleavers, people call it sticky weed or something. So if you walk around and it's in the garden, it will cling to you. It's like nature's Velcro. So some of the plants that we grow in our gardens, and I was so surprised about this because for me, if I find a plant and I'm interested and it looks interesting, I want to know about it. So I look it up and I do some research on it and then I experiment with it. I mean, obviously I don't just like chew everything I see, but maybe a little taste. So the Louisiana Healing Garden contains 50 different herbs that include not just wild herbs that you might think of as weeds, but also the plants that you think of as ornamentals. So I just made a short list of some of the plants that you can find in Louisiana Herb Journal that you might not normally think of as a medicinal herb or as healing. And that includes things like crepe myrtle, bottlebrush, roses, aster, bee balm, blue mist flowers, blueberry, chaste tree, echinacea, of course, gardenia, mimosa tree, okra, tulip tree, and wax mallow. So that's just a short list of some of the plants that are in there that many people grow because they're pretty. And then, so thinking about why we want to have healing gardens, I think a lot of times the state of the state feels overwhelming to us. Sometimes I remember hearing years ago about finding out about environmental status of different places, and a term that they called analysis paralysis. So that's like the more you hear of what's wrong with a place, you know, the more you feel sort of paralyzed, like, what the heck can I do about this? I'm not in charge of the world or other state or whatever, or even my block, you know. Um, so I think we are all aware of some of the changes that have happened in the state, to the state, and environmentally, and also we all wrestle with what is this, you know, what does this mean that we have all these different changes? There's unpredictable weather, increasingly severe storms, the challenges of living in unstable environmental times and threats to our home ground. And so on some level, I think we carry a little bit of a burden of that knowledge with us. And we sort of, I don't know, do different things about it, say, oh, I can't listen to this anymore, or I don't know what to do, or maybe they're wrong, or whatever. But we try to find some way to make an impact on the future of our home ground. And so, you know, despite feeling helpless, really are things that we can do. And so I guess one of the purposes of writing the Louisiana Healing Garden was to propose ways that we can have even a tiny impact. So if we find that there's something growing that we hadn't planned on, like somebody once said, a weed is something that grows where you hadn't planned on having it. You know, if you're pulling up wild petunias or cleavers or I can think of a thousand different things. If we can just look at what we're pulling up and see, identify it, and then do a little bit of research. It might be in Louisiana Healing Garden book, or it might be online, just to see if it has some potential for healing. Now, I'm not expecting that you become a guinea pig for yourself or your health or whatever, or your kids, you know, but try not to bump anybody off in your family. But if we can just start to identify some of those plants and maybe think of them in a different way, then as we get to know the land around us and get to know the plants that are growing around us, both the things that are in our gardens as ornamentals, but also the wild things that were uninvited and might be really pesky. If as we can start to identify them, then we might be able to make small changes in the ways that we perceive the land around us. You know, we look at our lawn and we want it to be green and grass and pretty and perfect. Maybe we could tolerate a little imperfection. Like I'm always yay for imperfection. I'm the queen of imperfection. So in doing those things, in kind of just changing the way we see the places around us and doing a little more investigation, I mean, to me, that gives me a little bit of a lift instead of having my heart be burdened with knowing so many things could be quote unquote wrong and so many challenges that we feel helpless about. But we can always do something. So get to know your weeds. You never know, they might be healthy. Okay, so a few things about healing. So again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, and it's really important to engage your healthcare practitioner with whatever you would like to try. You know, maybe you think you're dehydrated, so you can drink some more water, um, or just let your healthcare practitioners know what's going on. Because if you don't, how, you know, suddenly, I don't know, what, you ate too much cleavers or something, and you know now you have a bellyache. Um, Highly unlikely that you're going to eat too many cleavers. Okay, so first of all, the word healing. When I was teaching in the nursing school, I had discovered that the word heal, H-E-A-L, comes from the Anglo-Saxon word hal, H-A-L, and that hal originally meant whole and holy. So I really love that. I mean, healing really is a movement into our own wholeness. And in this case, when we're talking about the medicinal plants around us and the land, the healing of the land as well, the wholeness of the land. And, you know, for whatever our religious, spiritual, or lack thereof take might be on life, it is precious. I could use the word holy, but we don't have to. So our bodies can move toward that. So healing is something where we move toward our own wholeness. and our own unique, the mystery of our own unique lives. So that's how I like to think about healing. The other thing I like to think about in terms of healing is that it's not a contest. When I was first working as an herbalist, doing consultations and learning, and I was all fired up, and I thought everybody should take nothing but herbs, and um, it got, and conventional medicine is, they all want you to get hooked on pharmaceuticals and whatever. I was thinking at that time, and then I got more humbled, shall we say, and more practical. So he, healing is not a contest. It's not those people and are my people, or the herbalists versus the doctors, or it's not that. Healing really is, it's a spectrum of interventions. So just think about that. That's a spectrum of interventions. So it's like there are a number of different things we can do. If I start to feel kind of yucky, or I'm getting a sniffly cold or something, or I feel really kind of tired, what's the first thing I could do? Maybe I could drink more water. Maybe I'm dehydrated. So drinking more water is one step on an intervention, right? On a spectrum of interventions. Or, your kid needs brain surgery. Okay, so that's way over on the other spectrum of interventions. But if you need it, that person needs it, then that's what they need. But we every day, all the time, we're making choices somewhere along that spectrum of interventions. We're trying to figure out what's the best way that we can feel good. Maybe we need more exercise. Maybe we need less exercise. Um, Maybe our allergy season is coming up, and we could start taking local honey, like a teaspoon of local honey, once a day for the 2 weeks before your season starts. Or maybe what you're going to do is make sure you've got Flonase and antihistamines on. I mean, so those again are steps on a spectrum of intervention. So again, it's not a contest. Healing is not a contest. It's not us or them. It's how do we assess what's going on, and how do we take small steps toward our own healing. So in terms of herbs and medicinal plants, Stephen Foster was an herbalist who died, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. He was a wonderful herbalist from Arkansas. And I visited him actually when I was in herb school. And he took us all around, of course, and showed us many things. And, somebody said, okay, really, what is an herb? And he said, well, an herb can be anything from a baseball bat to a banana. It's like, wow. But if you think about it, I believe that bats are made out of ash wood, and the ash tree has some medicinal properties, and banana has some medicinal properties. So, trying to pin down what exactly is an herb. Usually it's a medicinal plant. Um, and but sometimes there are, um, exceptions to that rule as well. Let me see how I'm doing for time here. Okay. How do herbs work? So there are some people who feel like herbs have an energetic effect on our bodies. And there are some systems of healing, like Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, and others that feel like we have a constitution, different kinds of constitutions, and some part of that constitution might be out of balance, and the plants may help to shore up one part of our constitution. In general, the sort of westernized way of looking at it is that the plant is made up of natural chemical compounds, and that those compounds, and especially their synergy, or the way that they act together, those compounds have a particular biological activity. So they promote a particular biological activity. So for instance, an herb like horsetail, equisetum, might be a diuretic. And so if it's a mild diuretic, then it might also help for things like prevention of kidney stones, or helping with the beginnings of a bladder infection. And again, I'm not diagnosing or prescribing. I'm just telling you this is historically what it's done. So something might be decongestant and expectorant. So mullein is a weed that you can find in parts of the state, and that's strongly anti-inflammatory to the mucous membranes of the respiratory tract, um, and it's also decongestant and expectorant. So that is an herb that you could take for asthma, for instance, or if you have chronic bronchitis. So it's an herb that is mild, and I would take it on a regular basis for a while and see how my respiratory system did with it. Um, and um, and so one of the questions that people will ask sometimes is, well, how are they different from pharmaceutical drugs? And also, one of the things that Stephen Foster used to talk about is the fact that we think of drugs as being safe and herbs as being dangerous, when in fact, sort of really the opposite is true. So an herb has, it may have 100 or 500 different chemical compounds in it. Those compounds are very minute amounts in the plant, and they work synergistically together to produce different effects. But you have to work hard to kill yourself with an herb. I mean, like mulleins, like, I don't know, I guess if you ate a ton of it or something, it might feel kind of like you didn't ever want to poop again. But, pardon me, getting off the rails there. But with a pharmaceutical drug, what you have is something that one compound, it's an isolated compound. It's very potent in what it does. So you take a tiny amount of that and has a very potent effect. So, which is why we need prescriptions to get pharmaceutical drugs, because they are stronger than most of us know how to, prescribe for ourselves or use. Whereas medicinal plants are, and that's not to say that there aren't medicinal plants that you should avoid, but for the most part, medicinal plants, as was noted by James Duke, who worked for the FDA and did a lot of work with medicinal plants and whatever. Medicinal plants, again, have many compounds in them that are in such minute amounts that not one of those alone is not going to have any effect. Okay, maybe I made you more confused, hopefully not. But anyway, we can talk more about that later if people have questions. In addition, medicinal plants can also they can support body systems. Like, for instance, if I have a family history of cardiovascular disease, which I do, then which I do also, I can take hawthorn in small amounts on a regular basis, and then therefore shore up the health. So hawthorn is interesting because one of the ways it works is that it helps the cardiac muscle tissue absorb calcium more readily, and calcium is part of what's necessary for muscle contraction. And also we can use medicinal plants often have, so again, as I mentioned before, have some nutritional components as well, so that can be helpful. What kinds of things can be helped by medicinal plants? All kinds of things to shore up the health, and maybe to kind of be preventive in some ways. It's very interesting. I'm not recommending this for COVID, but I remember reading at the beginning of COVID that there was some research done on several different herbs that had proven to be active against the virus. So, and that research is ongoing all the time, all across the world. There's research being done, and including, like, if you are looking for a good source for information, NIH, National Institutes of Health, has a lot of information on medicinal plants. So, maybe people might have some questions about any of that, and we can talk about that when it's question time. Let's see. So what kinds of plants do we have in this book? Ta-da! Louisiana Healing Garden. And around us, there are native plants, and there's a lot to be said for, especially for gardeners, for growing as many plants as possible, and also for using native plants in community plantings can be really helpful. And so, moving in the direction of changing over to growing more natives can be really helpful for our gardens, but also for our health and the health of the soil and the land around you. And then there are naturalized plants, which means they didn't originally grow here, but they came in a long time ago and they've sort of made their home here, and they're doing okay, and they don't seem to have any negative impact on the rest of the soil or the land. Let's see, what else? Introduced. Well, that's kind of, introduces means they came from someplace else. They're probably you're not going to find a wild one out there. And then there are also invasive plants. And those are those little buggers that, you just can't get rid of, and they're taking over because they don't have any natural enemies. No bird or whatever wants to eat the seeds. So I really the book Louisiana Healing Garden has all those different kinds of plants in it. And I had thought at one time, and somebody asked me about why don't you just do an herbal of native plants? And my thinking about that is that's a great idea. And also, I just kind of feel like we have to start with what we have. What we have right now is a motley crew of different kinds of plants. And what the heck, if the weeds are driving you crazy, eat the weeds or find out what obviously you have to do some research and let your doctor know what you're doing. But why not take those cleavers that are driving you crazy out there and make a mild tea out of it? And that can be really helpful for lymphatic system support and also for mild bladder infections or fluid retention or things like that. So why not get friendly with your weeds and see what they might offer for you. Now, as one of my cousins just mentioned, there's yeah, not enough people in the world to take up all the cleavers in her yard. So but we find balance, right? That's part of what the whole thing is about. We're trying to find balance. Okay, the book. I already showed you the picture of the book. So what's in the book and why is it organized the way it is? First of all, there are photos of every plant that's in there. And, it's not a giant photo, but it's, I think, enough for you to have an identification. And I really think that's important because when I first started studying medicinal plants on my own, there were line drawings or descriptions, but that just, for me, it was like when I saw a photo, then I knew what I was looking for and it just kind of clicked. Um, the other thing that's in the book is identification features. So it will tell you, what the leaves look like, what the plant looks like, what the flower looks like, or whatever, whether it bears fruit or whatever. Also, the distribution. So that is where throughout the state can it be found. So some herbs can be found all over the place and some only in certain areas or certain parishes or certain, sections of the state. The plant status, so it will tell you right in the book whether it's a native or introduced or invasive or pesky or naturalized. It will also give you the medicinal properties. So that again is the things like it's a diuretic or it's a diaphoretic, which means it produces a sweat, therefore helping to lower fever. Or it's a cardiac support, or it's nerve tonic, or it's what else could I say? Astringent or anti-inflammatory. So those are the different kind of qualities that the plant overall has. So if I have arthritis, then I probably want to take something that has some nutrients in it. I want to take something that's anti-inflammatory. I want to take something that maybe supports the nervous system because if you have chronic pain, it can cause a lot of stress. So it will tell you those medicinal properties or the biological activities. And then it will also has a section that tells you what are common uses. So, maybe it's asthma or bronchitis or arthritis or tension or stress or ADHD or kidney stones or things like that. So it will tell you what historically it's been used for. It will also tell you the designation, which means is this something that's used in Chinese medicine? Is it from folkloric medicine? Is it an herb of commerce? So the herbs of commerce are important because those are the ones that worldwide research is constantly being done because the plant has found to be so useful, and they want to keep up on what research is the newest and what kinds of things can you count on. So if you're taking an herb of commerce, you're likely to go in Whole Foods or the drugstore, maybe even, or Walgreens or something like that, or Walmart, and find preparations because it has been proven to be non-harmful through so many studies that they can sell it to the general public. Where am I here? Common designation. And also the book will have risks. So it may be possible that you're taking certain kind of medication and you should not take an herb if you are taking that medication. So that's listed in there. And also if you have a tendency towards certain kinds of conditions, that might be triggered by using the herb, then that's in there as well. And I think that's really important because, sometimes people are extremely cautious and won't do anything, or sometimes they're like extremely gung ho and they want to like try everything they can. But I like to fall somewhere in the middle. We, it's not a contest. It's not, how willing are we to throw caution to the winds and jump right on the bandwagon. I highly don't recommend that. I highly recommend being sensitive about it. And also, if you think herbs are a good thing, don't start taking 10 at once. Start with one thing, one simple thing. Try it. Try it at the very lowest dose possible. Take it for a few days or a week, and then see how you feel. And then maybe you can increase the dose. And we'll talk about dosages later, whatever. But you know, again, you got time. We're here. We have some time. So just be considerate for yourself and your body and your health, and as you start using the medicinal plants, if you're going to do that. The other thing that's in the book is cultivation recommendations. So for these plants now, I find it hard to believe somebody out there wants to cultivate cleavers or burdock, but maybe you could grow for the market or something like that. But there are recommendations for each of the plants and how you might cultivate it if you want to do that. Another thing that's in there is also, there's a whole section at the beginning on how to make your herbal preparations. So that includes things like teas, tinctures. I happen to have a little magnolia tincture right here, one of my favorite things to assist in sleep and anxiety, etc. And we have, this is planting, sitting in some oil, so that will become a salve, a nice salve for bug bites and things like that. It will tell you how to make your different preparations, what supplies you need, what the process is. And it will also give you resources. So there are a lot of groups, organizations, reference materials, persons. We have a number of people in the state who are wonderful at doing guided walks, helping us to see and identify the medicinal plants and also the edibles. And there are a lot of fun groups online that you can join. And sometimes they have gatherings. So they gather in order to gather. But so I recommend that you find out what your resources are. And so therefore, there's a section at the back of the book for resources. There's also an index and a glossary. So if you're not familiar with some of the words that are in the book, you can look in the glossary. And there's reference material for each of the plants. So that's what's in the book. And what else have we here? All right. So, and the other thing is that the information is presented in what I think of as a pretty readable way. So, because all of this information for me does not occur in a vacuum, each of the herbs is presented in a vignette that that really describes my own experience with the plant, whether I'm finding it, discovering it, starting to try to use it. And so it gives a context in which I'm, finding and harvesting and identifying the plants. And it also describes some facet of living in the state that impacts our lives. So like things like storm recovery, the possible toxicity of soil, the joys of gardening, emergency preparedness, the importance of pass-along plants, which is actually, my cousin Jarrah told me about pass-along plants, and she's got a wonderful garden. And so I think I had never heard of the pass-along plants. So, if you don't know what that is out there, it's like somebody gave you a start of something and you grow it. And so in a way, you're growing not just a plant for yourself, but you're keeping their plant going as well, which I think is a lovely idea. And also the role of garden clubs and cultural and historical influences on using the different plants. So some titles of those vignettes include, here's my little crib notes again, Blue-Eyed Grass and the Crawfish Trail, Bottle Brush and the Garden Club, Chicory and the Café du Monde, Chase Tree and the Monks, Crepe Myrtle and the Mother Tree. I love the Mother Tree. It's such a great idea. Echinacea and Cancer Alley, which we are well aware of. St. John's wort and what I call the Grand Découragement. The Grand Dérangement being the expulsion of the Acadians from Nova Scotia and who settled down in Louisiana and other places as well, but primarily in Louisiana. The découragement meaning discouragement, because I think we all carry that kind of care and concern about the state and its status. What else? Juniper and the Gin Trail, and Tulip Tree and the EOC, Emergency Operations Center. So those are just a few of the vignettes, the chapters that talk about an herb in its context. So let's see how we're doing. Okay, so what I'd like to do right now is to just kind of wrap up this part of it, and I'm going to read you the end of the book, and just hopefully you've jotted down, or if you have questions, then Corey will open it up so we can have some Q&A time, and hopefully I will know some answers. So this is from the end of the book, and the title of it is Jesuit's Bark and the Throwaway Coast. At the end of the land in Lower Montague, I get out of the car and walk along the narrow road. Near a little bayou-side pond, dozens of shorebirds wade in shallow water, lift up in a cloud of feathers as I pass, then settle back down to feed. In the tattered rigging of an old shrimp boat, an osprey has built a nest that looks well used and revisited. When I get close, the big bird shrieks at me, uncomfortable and edgy, so I move away. A couple of fishermen stand in deep grass near the end of the land, tossing lines into the water. No luck so far, they say, but it's a good day to be out. At the edge of the road, much yellow sweet clover and giant ragweed and sow thistle are thick and lush. An orange lantana is blooming. Around my knees, Jesuit's bark is thick and tall, and I'm happy to see it, partly because it's a healing herb, but mostly because it helps to keep the coastal soils in place. I take a photo of the plants and soak up the wild silence, such a rare thing in these noisy, distracted times. I stand on this narrow, sinking spit of land while the grasses shift in the breeze. I am happy, anxious, hopeful, sad. Probably before too long, this place will crumble and wash away, but I will love it until its last salty breath, or until my own. Amen. Okay, Corey, if you're out there, I think that's it for me.
I am out there.
Right.
Thank you so much, Corinne. We have a very active chat, and so I'm excited to kind of get into a Q&A.
All right.
I want to thank everyone for being here with Corinne today. And I'm really excited to say that a lot of Louisiana is represented. So I just want to give a special shout out to Jerry from tuning in from Covington, Melissa from Pineville, Tia from Bywater, New Orleans. We got Patsy and Candy from Baton Rouge, Colleen from Baker, and Brittany's from Mansfield. And I am, of course, tuning in from the LSU, our office. We've got some really nice comments here, Corinne, that I want to read you a couple. And before I do that, I just want to remind everyone that if you have a question for Corinne, just put it in the chat. I'll ask her live, and ask away anything that's on your mind. We have a comment from Aaron saying, "I just bought the book yesterday, and I love it so much. Your writing is so deeply connected and beautiful. It's so refreshing." And there's one I wanted to say here. Let's see. From Jeremy, says the photos in the Louisiana Herb Journal were one of my favorite parts, so helpful. And actually, I have the book here, and the photos are really nice. But we almost got it there. There we are. Yeah, Echinacea and Cancer Alley, and then here's another one. Oh, yeah. You can kind of see that.
Cool.
Anyways, I guess I'm going to get started. We got a couple questions here from Colleen, and a question from Jerry. So I want to start actually with a question from Jenny Keegan, who's an acquisitions editor here at LSU Press, because I think it's a good way to start off. So Jenny asks, what new things have you been excited to learn in the course of writing the second book?
Hi, Jenny. Um, Gosh, well, really, it was such a surprise to me to read about. I don't even what made me think about all of the things that are cultivated that but I think, well, I knew that magnolia was, and people plant magnolias. So I think I just kind of wondered, okay, here's the crepe myrtle out there. What it could it possibly be that that's for, that is useful for something. Um, and I think that that was just I continue to be so surprised, and there's so many more. I mean, 300,000 words worth. But let me think what else. And roses, I have an uncle who, a great uncle who had some roses and that was in the rose section where he hasn't lived there for years, but the roses that he planted are still there. So rose petals, wow, how amazing is that to grow? Um, Blue-eyed grass, I love crawfish. So every time all the crawfish chimneys come up, I'm like finding the blue-eyed grass right around them. Chase tree, that was a really cool one too, because I know many people who grow chase tree. I'm trying to remember its Latin name, Vitex agnus castus, because it's so beautiful, and then it has beautiful fruit as well. And then I looked it up, and of course, the monks used it for reducing libido. And it also contains some progesterone boosting properties. So I was just so intrigued, and that I think. Sorry, I'm being blabby here, but I think the thing that's it's so much wonder to me. It's so much amazement that I have over the plants, even the things we just grow because we think they're pretty and they're medicinal. What a surprise. Not.
All right,
And
we're going to move along here because we have a lot of questions,
okay.
a lot of great questions I'm excited to get into. But before I get into the next question, I want to read this comment from Mike. Mike says, "This is perfect timing for my family. Thank you so much for your time and so much time and energy spent helping others. I love how you spoke to these things with so much wisdom and care."
Thank you.
Thank,
Thank you.
thank, I'm going to get into a question from Colleen here. This question is, as a clinical herbalist, did you find you were able to provide treatments using primarily remedies that were available locally, or did you often turn to remedies used throughout the country or even the world?
Um, I would say I go local first, and there's this kind of like an herbal axiom or something that, it's like the things that you find in your yard that are driving you crazy are probably what you need for your own body. I mean, I kind of have this sense that, and I think other people feel that way too, that your body is made up of the land around you. You're breathing in the air, you're drinking the water. So I'd like to go with what's right under people's feet if I can. But there are sometimes other herbs that grow in other parts of it, like out in Ayurvedic medicine that grow in some other country even. I mean, mimosa, I think is Chinese. I think they call it Chinese happiness tree. So, I do a mix if I can start local, especially if I can have people go and harvest their own things right out of their yard. That just, to me, it completes a cycle. So I like to do that. And I'm also open to things that grow in other places. That was a wordy answer.
Well, to answer that, Jeremy in the chat says, "We want you to be blabby."
Okay,
So,
Blabby. Believe
so
me,
the,
you're the only person who ever said that.
we have a comment from Candy too that says, "Yes, the plants you need for your healing show up around you."
Mhm.
I love
Cool.
that.
Yeah.
All right, moving along. Let's see what we got here. A lot of questions. Okay, I got a little question here from Colleen, then I'm going to move on to a question from Jerry. Colleen says that your document listing all the plants of Louisiana that are medicinal, that really long one, is that available too?
No. No, what it is it's what I started, it's my document where I put all of their search for everything I was finding. And and it's not refined, it's not in any kind of order other than here's the name of the plant and here's all the research behind it. So I mean, if you have a question about any particular plants, I'd be happy to answer them online or something like that, or by email. But yeah, phew, that's a project.
Aaron in the chat says, "I second the blabbiness, blab away."
Okay, you guys are invited to be my puppies.
I want to get to Aaron, I'm going to get to your question and then I'm going to backtrack with some other ones because
Okay.
I want to get into this. I really love this question from Aaron. Aaron says, I love your connection to the Western medicine world as well as herbal remedies and plants. My mother is a nurse, and I always find those two worlds are often at odds with each other. How do
Yeah.
you find it bridging the gap in that space?
Um, well, since I taught nursing students, it was to me it was amazing how open they were to hearing about these things. Now, some of it they thought we were crazy, but then, I had a home birth midwife come in and talk to the class too, and they thought I was crazy for that too. But I think we're in a really interesting and important time because there is so much research behind medicinal plants. I mean, if NIH has it and Sloan Kettering and Mayo Clinic, I mean, all you have to do, go on their websites and search, for that, and you'll find that they have research on medicinal plants. So, and there's some big group in Maryland, I think it's through the University of Maryland College Park. So there's a lot of research. The hard part is getting practitioners who can understand the importance of both worlds. Um, and so, sometimes maybe naturopathic doctors can be helpful with that. Or study, if you work if you're a nurse and you work in a group practice or something like that, how about having an in-service once a month or something like that? I mean, um, and also there are medicalized herbalists who are more medicalized. In other words, I'm thinking that there are pharmacists really who also know a lot about medicinal plants. So, I mean, research, just find some of those research projects and maybe just have in-services or share information with people. Um, and I wish I had on the tip of my head some of the books that are more medicalized, but it's really important and it's a really engaging and emerging field. Um, One more thing, Andrew Weil at the University of Arizona Medical School, they have a botanical medicines program. So, find out some about that because I think it's a really important intersection, and yay for nurses because I love doctors, but nurses are the people who do the healing, and they're there every minute of every day, and they're the people who know what somebody needs. So anyway, congratulations, and keep trying. And maybe I should do never mind. Ugh, don't give me another idea. Okay, sorry.
Well, actually, speaking of that, Colleen in the chat says with a wink, that's your next book.
Oh boy. Okay. Thank you.
And um, Candy says healing gardens at hospitals is a wonderful development for wellness.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, when I worked at the University of Southern Maine, we created a medicinal healing garden for the nurses to come out and look at and help plant and stuff like that. So that was really cool. And also, some places will offer classes. Jen Blanchard was at LSU and was doing the medicinal plant class, and I forget the name of it, but so there are places that are they're getting the information out there. So yay.
We got a comment here from Aaron that says, I second that nurses do the healing and most of the work.
Yeah, it's true. And get
All right.
less of the, whatever honors.
I'm gonna do two rapid fire questions and then we're gonna get to a bigger question.
Okay.
This question is actually from Colleen. Colleen asks, when you refer to St. John's wort, are you referring to the dwarf variety that grows everywhere? I didn't think that traditional St. John's wort grew here.
There are several hypericums that grow in the state, and they're all, I wish I could remember, like 7 or 8 of them, I think. And so each of them has a little bit different collection of compounds, but in general, they can often be used interchangeably. So I think you'll find that information in the book as well. And and you can grow Hypericum perforatum here in the state. And so that's the cultivation or information is in the book. But the other St. John's worts are like St. Andrew's Cross, Crux Andre, whatever. Can't remember all their Latin names right now, but there are a number of them, and they are all have medicinal use documented. So
We got we got comment from Candy in the chat that says Jen Blanchard's classes and plant lists are fantastic.
I agree. That's where
Um,
the next medical herb book should come from. Jen, are you out there? I'm just saying.
this is a request actually from Jerry. Jerry asks, would you be open to speak at a vegetarians meeting, an arm of the St. Tammany Master Gardeners, where you're interested in edible plants and their ecosystems?
Hmm. Well, I know more about medicinal plants than edible plants, but I'm certainly willing to, you know, we could talk about it. I mean, I'm not adverse to doing it. It's just that I might not be the best person to do it. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Does that make sense? Okay. Like,
Definitely.
like, oh gosh, Johnny Bordelon, who has oh gosh, Louisiana edible plants, mushrooms, and I can never remember the whole title of it. And then Charles Allen up in Pitkin, Louisiana, does a wonderful edible herb. And that's the coolest thing is we have so many resources in this state. So you can, I mean, I went up to visit Charles Allen and I opened the door and got out and he started walking me around the place and showing me everything. So, there are resources in addition to myself who know lots about edibles. Okay.
Yeah, we actually have a question here from Colleen, and I think this question will be relevant to Jerry too.
Okay.
Colleen wants to know, is there a place where people can reach out to you if they have further questions about plants?
Okay. Well, so I'm in the process of putting together and getting my website up and running. You can use my email and just shoot me an email and tell me what you're what you want. And I don't know, can I give them my email on here or is that against the rule or anything like that?
No, yeah, go right ahead, of course.
So my email is all lowercase, my name, CORINNEMARTIN .BODI, my little doggy who's no longer here, at Gmail. So, just let me know what you're calling about and I'll have that website up hopefully in the next month or so.
Is that BODI or BODY?
BODI.
Perfect. Put it in the chat.
Okay,
Jerry
good.
says you would be great for the meeting, and we've studied mushrooms and have an interest in medicine
Oh,
herbs.
yay. And the whole herbalism is now including the whole arm of the well, not an arm, but of medicinal mushrooms because they're just so helpful. So what? And we can eat them. Okay.
I want to apologize, Candy. I'm sorry for keeping you waiting for this great question, but we're up now. Candy asked, what tools and resources do you recommend for drying and processing healing plants?
Hmm. Well, when I first started at drying, what I used was old window screens.
Wow,
propped up.
really?
Well, yeah. I mean, why throw? I mean, yeah. So window screens propped up on a couple of chairs, and that works if you do not live in an extremely humid place. So if you're gonna, excuse me, harvest your plants in Louisiana, I recommend that you do it when it's not 95% humidity. And one option that you have in Louisiana for drying is to dry in the oven. So you just set the oven on to its lowest temperature, warm, prop the door open just a little bit, and just put them on a cookie sheet and put them, excuse me, in the oven. And then check on them every, excuse me, 20 minutes or so until they're crumbly. And then when you take them out, let them cool off and then put them in a jar. Um, and you can also buy a food dehydrator. So any of those things are possible. I mean, when part of the year I spend in Maine, and usually it's not that humid, so I can just air dry really easily. And then did I get all of that, or was there another
Yeah,
part of that question?
I
Okay.
think so. We got a couple questions left here. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, Corinne. But I do want to ask you this great question that's also from Jenny Keegan. Um, Jenny wants to know what changes you're seeing in plants and gardening as the weather's been warmer and more unpredictable over the last couple of years.
Mhm. Um, People are struggling to figure out how to deal with it and how to predict what's going to happen. That's part of what happens. You know,
Right.
and um, and so there isn't any way to predict it. So what I recommend is just expect both. Expect a bunch of different things, and maybe as you're planning your garden or planting your garden, um, you can kind of pretend it's a shoulder season and grow something that is going to be okay in either season. But Harvesting times can be challenging to figure out. Um, but, there's some information in the book about, harvesting timing. Yeah, I mean, I think just we have to be resilient because we're going to have to make changes. And again, I don't know that that really answers your question. Like Maine, for instance, there's already not very much snow on the ground, and that's really unusual for this time of year. So, and here we had some 20-degree nights, several nights in a row where it was 20 something degrees, which is like everybody here thinks it's cold when it's 60. So, so be flexible, and plan your garden accordingly. Plant something for warm seasons, something for cold seasons, or yeah, harvesting time. That's in the book as well. But and each plant part has a different harvesting timing, so that's important to know too. I don't know if that answered the question.
I think that's answers it perfectly. Be flexible is the thing that's really ringing in my ear, and I think that's just kind of something we all kind of have to do right now in
Right.
general.
Okay.
I got two questions left on deck. This is your last opportunity. If you have a question for Corinne, maybe I'll take one more besides that. But I actually have a question. I have a question for me that I do want to ask you,
Mhm.
because I'm interested in like when you're gathering herbs.
Mhm.
Like let's say you see something really nice on like the side of the road.
Mhm.
I find myself worrying about pollution a lot, or runoff, and I just wondered if you have any
Right.
kind of recommendations for, like,
Yeah.
even in my backyard. I think about all the cleaver I have, right? But I'm like, is this cleaver
Right.
good to eat? How do I
Right.
wash it? What should I be worried about?
Right. First of all, you should wash anything you pick because my kids used to complain about it. Mom, a deer could have peed on it. So of course I started washing things. Um, I don't recommend planting things. I mean, pick up harvesting from the side of the road. I mean, unless it's like an old dirt road and it doesn't get much traffic or whatever. Um, just because especially if you live in a really populated area, you have, gasoline fumes and runoff, and somebody might have sprayed. A lot of towns spray for mosquitoes and stuff like that. So I really recommend that go to a more out of the way place. If it owned by a farmer, a rancher, or something like that, ask them if they use chemical, if you're able to harvest some stuff there. And, really what you want is weeds mostly. Um, and the other option is for people who live in highly trafficked areas or in cities, is raised beds, grow them yourself. Um, and I mean, you kind of have to keep in mind again where you're living. I mean, if you're living in a more rural area, I think your chances, unless you're living right next to a farm that might be spraying, um, that you can sort of count on it being, safer. And if you're living in a highly populated, highly trafficked area, you can count on it not being so safe. And also keep in mind that what you're taking is, you might be getting a teaspoon of this stuff 3 times a day. So it's not like your main food group. But I think erring on the side of safety is really important.
I have a really lovely comment from Jeremy in the chat that I want to share. And
Okay.
then I'm going to finally get to my last question for you, and we'll call it an afternoon.
Okay.
Um, Jeremy says, just a comment, I would love for Corinne to know that because of the Louisiana Herb Journal, hibiscus and the big heat, I've searched out beautiful swamp mallow plants, took
Mm.
cuttings from the side of the highway, and now I have beautiful mallows growing in my garden. Her
Oh,
work has readers
exciting.
taking action to heal their spaces.
Yay. Yeah, and I mean, thank you for saying that. And I just think that that's it, we can do little things. We don't have to change the world overnight. We're not gonna, but we can do tiny things like that, bring them home and make them at home and give them a nice little space to grow. Yay, thank you.
I wasn't going to take any more questions, but we have this really nice question from Mike that I think is a good kind of ending question.
Okay.
Um, so I'm going to ask it to you. Mike wants to know if you have a top three for a beginner to start growing. He says, we've started paying attention to what is growing, but I'm interested in your favorites if you have them.
Mhm, mhm. Um, I love magnolia, and those if you, it's going to be a while before you get flowers. Passion flower, I love passion flower. It's just such a great herb to use for the nervous system support.
Hmm.
Um, Growing, I love gardenias. I don't know how you would, you know, the challenge with that is how to find something that is close to the original plant. Let me just look at the Joe Pye weed is really fun. It's beautiful. Animals love it. Trying to find it, my little list here of all things. Blueberries, you know what a great thing to do. You could grow blueberries and have fruit, and it's medicinal. The fruit is medicinal and healing, and also the leaves are medicinal. I mean, blueberry leaf tea is like a great thing for supporting blood sugar control or blood sugar balance. Um, Chicory is really nice, and you can eat it, and it might not taste great, but it's really a great support for the liver. So, I mean, I know it doesn't look gorgeous, but you know, some of the cool things to put in your garden include things like I think you showed those photos,
Mhm.
Dallas, and also what was the other one? Fumitory. So they're really adorable in a small garden. They're really they're just such unusual little flowers, but they're also medicinal. So that's kind of cool, right? I think anyway. Yeah,
Here's a
yeah,
picture of Corey Dallas, and
yeah,
I think we can kind
yeah.
of see it.
Really good for the nervous system. And then the fumitory one you showed earlier,
Mhm.
they're so interesting looking, and you can put them in a little tiny bed area, and people will go, "Wow, what is that?" So, and they're medicine, yay!
This is my last question for you.
Okay.
Um, but before I ask, I do want to thank you for, you know, imparting all this knowledge and wisdom and your time with us today. We've all really enjoyed it. And I want to thank everyone for being such active participants in the chat. There is a 40% off code that's pinned to the top of this chat. So, um, you know, if you don't have the book, this is a cheap way to get it.
Yeah.
If you can't find it, feel free to send us a DM and I'll send you to that link. Um, our sort of, I'm going to ask our pretty much our traditional last question for authors, which is that, you know, you had this book done, you know, probably at least a year ago now. I'm just curious what you've been working on. Is there a follow-up to Louisiana Healing Garden? Like, what's next?
Well, I'm kind of thinking about that. I was hoping not to, just because, you know, I'm getting old here, but I'm still, yeah, I'm kind of thinking in the direction of, you know, there are just so many medicinal plants here. It's ridiculous, and the state so needs um, as much as we can do for it, even tiny, tiny steps. So I've been kind of thinking about I'm hearing more and more about different groups like native plant societies in different areas and the biocultural collaborative and you know different places that are really working to help the land heal and to help people see the land in a different way and take kind of a stewardship caretaker mentality or approach. So I'm kind of thinking it would be kind of cool to have that move that along, have another 50 herbs and the gentle, I call them the gentle healers or the gentle you know, the gentle warriors. So we'll see. We'll see. You
Well,
never know.
thank you again for being here with us, Corinne. Jeremy says it was so enjoyable and so enjoyable. Jerry says, thank you for this. I'm excited about adding it to my library. That's all
Yay.
we have for today. Corinne, is there anything you would like to share before we go?
So just thank you so much, Corey and Jenny out there and Colleen. Thank you for your questions. And also thank you all for all because thank you all because I really feel like, you know, the changes that we need, the healing that we need, not only for our own health, but also for the place where we live, our home ground, it's really in all of our hands. So it's nice to know there are so many hands out there. Yay.
That's a beautiful way to end. All right. Bye bye.
Thank you. Take care.